Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots. Bootlicker, shills, desolators, peasants, vassals, fake slime, meat sacks. I'm a useful idiot. Today I want to talk about the civil war in Iraq and the sectarian violence that's been going on in Iraq for some 10 years. It's been characterized as a civil war on numerous occasions, and it certainly is befitting. And one could argue that this civil war has been ongoing for the last 10 years. The only thing that held it to certain subdued levels was U.S. presence for some time, but the U.S. is no longer there, as John Kerry has made it very clear. But now we have a little interesting spillover from Syria, as Al-Qaeda has now moved into Iraq's two of Iraq's largest cities, Ramadi and Fallujah. Everyone should be familiar with Fallujah as the center of two major U.S. offensives, very brutal offensives against Sunni insurgency there a couple times over the time of the American occupation. And of course, there's a lot of irony in all this, the fact that Al-Qaeda have now returned to Iraq when previous to the American invasion, there was no connection between Al-Qaeda and Iraq whatsoever. In fact, they were nemesis of each other and represented the antithesis of each other's values. And but the carnage in Iraq is certainly stepped up, so one could be justified in qualifying this as a civil war. Up to 10,000 killed just last year in the sectarian violence, Sunni on Shia. And so we see the same playbook that we see in all these other Middle Eastern countries with this Sunni Shia animosity and sectarian violence, and it's spilling over into Lebanon as well. And so one of the things that makes that an interesting factor, especially now that we have the introduction of Al-Qaeda into Iraq in these last several years, bespeaks of some Saudi Arabia involvement. And this would make sense, as Saudi Arabia, as I've discussed in numerous videos recently, is certainly staking out its own foreign policy. And let's remember that the Maliki government is a Shia government that is more than friendly with Saudi Arabia's nemesis, Iran. So there could be some interest in destabilizing Iraq as well. And the fact that Al-Qaeda has been introduced there, and we know that Saudi Arabia uses them as proxies in Syria and elsewhere, one has to examine that possible connection. And another interesting aspect of this, of course, is that should there be continued and escalating violence between the Shia and Sunni elements in this Iraq conflict, Kurdistan certainly would gain greatly. And I could see further consolidation of a central Kurdish nation coming out of a failed Syria and a failed Iraq. And I've just discussed this possibility before, so I think that factors into this as well. And one could argue that Israel and the United States certainly have a lot to gain by an independent Kurdistan, and it seems like it would bode well for Saudi Arabia as well. And certainly to remove Iraq's affiliations with Iran. So there's some underlying factors in this conflict that's unfolding in Iraq. And once again, the Middle East has complexities layered on top of complexities. But I also want to point out a quote from a Sunni in Anbar province, in this area where Al-Qaeda is coming. And apparently what's happening is that a lot of Sunni insurgents are lining up with Al-Qaeda, and the other part of the Sunni insurgency wants to basically fight Al-Qaeda because they think they're not good for Iraq as well. And one soldier was quoted as saying, quote, "We fought the Americans, we fought the Maliki army, and now we are fighting Al-Qaeda." And that's from a man named Firas Mohammed, who is an engineer when he's not at war, something you don't read every day. And one of the things that's problematic for me discussing Al-Qaeda, of course, is the fact that Al-Qaeda grew out of the Mujahideen. It was a militant Muslim group that was militarized by the CIA in the United States to resist Soviet occupation in Afghanistan. And since that time, they've been useful idiots, because the reality has been actually created out of the mythology. And that is the fact that Al-Qaeda has essentially been used as a tool by Saudi Arabia and as a tool by the U.S. and the CIA, and only through this mythology that was created by Western powers. Well, I guess it's not really Western powers when you consider Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia. It's interesting that Al-Qaeda has now become a reality, where before it was just a lie, a fabricated mythology. But now, to put it in colloquial terms, it's cool to be part of the Al-Qaeda umbrella. So militant groups all over the world now, and particularly Islamists, radical Islamists, can all affiliate themselves with Al-Qaeda and get street cred and basically become famous and become credible. So that's how I believe Al-Qaeda operates. So that plays into this scenario that we find in Iraq now, with another so-called affiliated Al-Qaeda group operating an insurgency inside Iraq. And if we continue to see the kind of body counts we're seeing there now, we can safely say that there's already a low-level civil war in Iraq. And even though Iraqis are quoted as saying they don't want to end up like Syria, unfortunately, it's a very real possibility. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.